actually, it looks perfect. Temperatures will be coming down for Friday and especially Saturday. But today, my goodness, it was incredibly hot once again. 101 was
record-setting 101 Fahrenheit. Old record today, 98 degrees. So we beat the record by 3 degrees. Average high is supposed to be 82.
the high that beats the daily record of 98 back from 1940. And this also breaks yesterday's record, not even 24 hours old, for the latest end of the year we've ever been above 100. Out there right now, still sunny. A few clouds are moving on in. Here's the forecast.
The latest in the year that we've ever been on record. You know, as I sit and I watch my country basically being destroyed, being run over, being put in all these very, very difficult positions. Also sit and watch the climate deniers that I guess are still a dime a dozen out there that you can find. Those that says, oh, well, it's an act of God, or those that says, no, we're just going through some sort of a here today and gone tomorrow event. Well, if it's here today and it's here tomorrow and it's here the day after tomorrow and it continues on this level like it's been doing for the past few years, that pretty well speaks volumes about that it's not just a cycle, but it's actually occurring towards it warming up. I realize a lot of people would like to not believe that humanity has had something to do with the warming of the planet and the warming of the atmosphere. I realize that people, by and large, rather blame God for everything that we have created or the devil has created working through us. I realize that people are still in just as much denial today as what there was whenever God first started this thing, whenever the devil entered into the Garden of Eden and contaminated the minds of Eve and contaminated the minds of Adam, and God come back and Adam blamed the woman and the woman blamed the snake, pertaining to the contamination that come into that particular atmosphere at that particular time. And by and large, that's exactly correct. It was the devil's fault. It was the Luciferian Lucifer working through the serpent that actually caused the serpent to no longer function as the serpent used to function, because now it was struck down by God and it had to basically roam around the rest of its days on its belly. In other words, God changed the dynamics of the snake and also changed the dynamics towards Adam and Eve living in the Garden of Eden, and also changed the dynamics towards man and woman returning back into the earth. That woman would bear children, man would work for the woman in raising a family, and it would go down from generation to generation. Since the devil got his lick in, I'm going to use the metaphor towards hitting below the belt, sneaking into the garden and doing what he done to Adam and Eve. We have seen where now, thousands of years later, the world has become a place where the stagnation of the works of humanity have basically infiltrated our lives and infiltrated this planet. I want to go now, after seeing that weather event that happened today. This is September I think it's the 24th. It may be the 25th. I don't know. You'd think that maybe their little outline right there would say, but anyways, I'm going to go back to the very front of the show
from 1940, and this also breaks yesterday's record, not even 24 hours old, the latest into the year we've ever been above 100.
All right, let me go back. Let's go back. Let's go back to the world news. Go, 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 go. Go, 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 go. And let's see what happened today up in New York City pertaining to the meeting with the United Nations. Looks like it was broadcasted right about there.
Dose provides the same.
Now let's go forward a little bit. 529. See the little tattletale thing down on the bottom? Going forward, going forward. Just amazing how many commercials that they can fit into a slot. All right, let's stop.
Tonight, the bombshell lawsuit, the state of New York versus Donald Trump. New York's Attorney General announcing her office is suing the former president, his 3 eldest children, and their family company for $250 million, alleging a more than decade-long pattern of fraud. The AG accusing Mr. Trump of wildly misrepresenting the value of his assets, including his Trump Tower apartment and his Mar-a-Lago estate, in a scheme to deceive banks, insurers, and the public. Could the suit shut down his businesses? And could Mr. Trump also face criminal charges? How he's firing back. Also tonight, President Biden at the UN condemning Vladimir Putin after he announced he's drafting 300,000 more troops. The Russian president escalating his nuclear threats, warning the West this is not a bluff. And the 2 Americans freed in a Russian-Ukraine prisoner swap, the key role played by the Saudi Crown Prince. Hurricane Fiona strengthening into a monster Category 4 storm. We're on the ground. Plus Al Roker with where it's headed next. The Fed announcing another supersized interest rate hike to the highest level since 2008. The impact on your money. And the 2 major league sluggers chasing home run history.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. Former President Donald Trump's legal troubles deepening tonight, putting his business empire in jeopardy. New York's Democratic Attorney General naming Mr. Trump and his 3 oldest children in a sweeping civil lawsuit, accusing them of 200 instances of fraud for allegedly manipulating the value of assets like the president's Mar-a-Lago and Trump Tower residences, aimed at securing favorable bank loans and reducing taxes and inflating Mr. Trump's net worth by billions. New York Attorney General Letitia James seeking to prevent the Trump family from serving as officers in any New York business. And while it is not a criminal case, New York officials are turning some of their findings over to federal prosecutors regarding possible criminal acts they uncovered. Tonight, Mr. Trump denying the accusations, calling it another witch hunt by a racist attorney general. Here's Peter Alexander.
Tonight, a dramatic legal move that could effectively shut down the New York real estate empire
Let's
that
back
bears...
up. Let's back up for a second. Back up. They took a picture of Trump.
Attorney General. Here's Peter Alexander.
Right there. Half good, half bad. Half light, half darkness. Split him right down the middle. It's amazing how much hot water that a family or one particular person can get into pertaining to their political affairs. And you know, I can truly relate to how that they have been bird dogged or witch hunted in every perspective, because I myself have been done that way, and I'm sure there's been thousands, if not millions more, that have been done similar ways because they either made somebody mad, or they said the wrong thing to somebody, or they brushed up against the wrong politics, or they was misunderstood for whatever reason. But it's very obvious that they obviously must have a great deal of information on this guy, that his name keeps coming up every single day as a vice president, but ordinarily it comes up in a botched, I'm going to use the word botched because I don't know the things that they're accusing him of is in fact true. I can only tell you the things that I think that is true. I think that he embezzled a great deal of businesses up in New York City, but unless I was there and I actually experienced it and seen it, or unless it's been proven, it's only really an accusation. But they have steadily been digging at this guy and working on him to the degree that even if half of this stuff that they continue to keep bombarding the American people with pertaining to this negative imagery that they continue to keep portraying about this man, if only half of it was true, I don't see how people could support him. I don't see how people could finance him. I don't see how people would even either endorse him or allow for him to endorse them, because it's turned into a Wild Wild West show with him. And it seems like every day more negative information comes out about Donald J. Trump. Now, whenever I was led by God in explaining to my viewers the night of the final tally of the election, and he spoke up that he had won the election, I knew that what he was saying was nothing more than a bald-faced lie. God had explained to me that there was going to be severe repercussions over this particular election, and that I needed to alert my people, those that has any faith in me at all, in which I tend to wonder, the way that I've been rejected and denied for the past 30 plus years, if I do have any out there that believes in me or that has any faith in me pertaining to the things that I say. But God revealed to me within a couple hours that this individual was stirring up trouble towards being a rebel riser, and that he had lost the election. Since then, I have maintained that same status. And the reason why, it's not because the evidence has supported my, I guess you'd call it forecast or prediction, but I know that whenever God speaks to my heart and he tells me something, that that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be, regardless whether people like it or not. If it's been written or chiseled in stone for it to occur, then that's the way it's going to occur. Even the Bible says that it would have been easier for all of heaven and for all earth to pass than for one jot or one tittle to fail. That's the reason why I keep telling people again and again and again that God is not through with America, that God is not through with the Homo sapiens down here on the planet, and that we need to go back and interpret the scriptures properly in end-time biblical Bible prophecies, and we need to regain that closer relationship with God. Now, does that mean that you're going to be perfect? Does that mean you're going to be able to walk on water? Does that mean you're going to be able to turn water into wine? Does that mean that you're going to be able to raise the dead? Does that mean that you're going to be able to heal the blind? Well, that's determining on how close that you want to get to God. Because the Bible says that these things cometh only through prayer and fasting. I myself am struggling with the flesh every day, just like everybody else. I myself needs to draw closer unto God each and every day, just like everybody else. I myself fight the same type of irresistible, sometimes it seems like, temptations, and draw closer unto thee, just like everybody else. But to see a prior president, even if it is Donald J. Trump, be used as a punching bag, as a whipping post, because they're scared of Donald J. Trump because of him wanting to drain the swamp. They're scared of Donald J. Trump towards him possibly running for president again. And it seems like everything and everybody for the past year and a half or longer, since January the 6th, has been coming out of the woodwork towards coming after him. And in a sense, Donald Trump can't blame nobody but Donald Trump. And the reason why is because of his shady deals. That's exactly the reason why I believe that the commentator tonight done his face in half shade, half light, is because of the shady deals that now the American people are finding out about. And there's no doubt that there's been other presidencies. There's been Congress, there's been senators, there's been mayors, there's been governors, there's been politicians far and wide that have projected the same imagery as we're seeing right there towards half good, half bad, in a shady type atmosphere or environment there. But I've never seen the people turn on him, basically like turning on a biting dog. And the only other politician that I can think of that you don't hear a whole lot of anymore is George Walker H. Bush's life, that even he himself said that the people can turn on you like a biting dog. And I think, speaking from experience from one of the prior presidencies, now this man can begin to use his personal experiences towards being able to relate to just exactly what George Walker H. Bush was talking about, towards read my lips, no new taxes. Read my lips, no new taxes. I mean, whenever you lie to the American people, it don't matter what you lie to them about. Whenever you lie to the American people, eventually your lies will have a tendency of finding you out. I just prayed to God that before they absolutely wound this individual to the point that he will no longer even be allowed on a TV circuit network program, much less running for any type of public office, that he will come clean. And he will stop this nonsense pertaining to the January 6th deal and tell the American people that he was wrong in how that he motivated those ideals, how that he was wrong in projecting things that he knew that was incorrect, how that he was wrong even giving advice by certain other people working around or in his cabinet, and basically just come clean and apologize to the American people the same way that Bill Clinton did. Because I guarantee you, there are certain things that you do in the eyes of the people that you may get away with, then again you may not. What's more, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Are you part of the problem? Are you part of the solution to the problem? The part that I'm trying to make here, in all sincerity, regardless of what president that it was, anytime you're having these kind of developments happen to anybody's life, especially a president or a prior president, it's only bringing that much more remorse, hardship, division, anguish, sorrow, and all the above. It's only festering the things that have already been festering, rather than conceding and saying that you was wrong about the election. This could almost damper down to the point of disappearing. I'm not saying that it would disappear, because obviously the courts are in motion towards doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying and proving what they're proving. I guess if they're not doing it for no other reason, they're doing it for historical trueness in the history books reasons, towards making sure that it's being recorded properly and done right. So it's kind of difficult to stop everything what's going on, but I truly believe that if he really loved this country, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, regardless of what his intentions was originally towards wanting to drain the swamp, I truly believe that if Donald J. Trump loved this country as much as he proclaims that he loves this country, why can't he do the proper and right thing in the eyes of the American people? He's done stained. He's branded. Kind of the same way that they branded Nixon, in the same way that they branded Bill Clinton, in the same way that they've branded other people that's made public bad mistakes. And basically the way that they've branded me illegitimately, going all the way back to 1983 over here in a little old town that is intimidated by a bunch of white squirrels. And you know, it's hard, it really is, it's difficult to wear that brand off. It's difficult to get that smell or that stink off of you, especially whenever we're dealing with not only an illegitimate person that has done illegitimate things, but whenever you're dealing with a illegitimate society that can snap just as easily one way as they do another. It's only intensifying and exacerbating the problem by all these major networks that continue to bash, hound, pound, pounce Donald J. Trump on a day-to-day level. In reality, it's bringing more destruction into our country than it is good. And it's really sad, regardless of what president that it may have been. Because this has festered and festered and festered and festered, just like a festering sore that refuses to come to its full boil. That way you can go ahead and pop the head on it and maybe bleed it out to the point that maybe it'll heal itself. This is almost like that same festering sore that sometimes people get that just won't go away. Kind of like a bad penny, it just keeps popping up. And these are all negative influences in the American establishment towards united we stand, divided we fall. United we stand, divided we fall. And if Donald J. Trump can accept that he has been had, you have been caught. I guarantee you they've got enough testimonies right now that if they wanted to throw an indictment onto him pertaining to the January 6th deal, they could probably do it without batting an eye, and whenever it's all said and done with, prove their case. So why can't Donald J. Trump, in seeing how close that the hounds has come upon to him, realizing that, you know what, you've been captured, they got you, you've been had. The evidence proves that you knew otherwise You knew the laws, you knew the procedures, and you still went ahead and pumped up and revved up the people, done a Jerry Springer promotion, basically panhandling on a group of people, playing them to the extent the way that you have played them. And you can't say that that's not what Jerry Springer has been noted for, because he gets in a crowd and he takes somebody's bad event that happened in their lives and he starts rooting it on. And the next thing you know, he gets the crowd in behind him, and the next thing you know, knockdown and dragouts was common on his show. Very common. It was very common to see bloodshed on Jerry Springer's show up in Chicago. I know for a fact because I had a niece that worked up there for him, towards doing the makeup, being a makeup artist, and helping the camera work and keeping the lights all on and doing the things that needed to be done. And I guess Jerry Springer actually got wealthy and multi-rich off of that, pretending to start his own show. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the last time I looked, he was worth about, if I'm not mistaken, it was either $20 million or $200 million. So yes, there's profit in spewing out negativity. There's profit in it in today's society in America. You never would have thought that, but you can actually profit off of spewing out negativity. But there's also consequences. Now, what this man needs to do is weigh out the differences. Is he willing to allow for the country to continue to be torn, ripped apart, and weakened over his lie that he created in trying to convince others that the election had been stolen? Every day, whenever people hear his name and see his face, it's no longer being projected in a good way, in a good light, but now it's being projected in a dark way, in a negative way. And I really feel sorry for him and the family in a way, because they have stepped off into an arena that they had no idea and what they were stepping off into, towards being a bunch of unprofessional politicians. And there's no doubt, there is absolutely no doubt, that something needed to be done here in America pertaining to bringing transparency to all the crooks and all the haggling and the crookedness that goes on here in the good old USA. There's no doubt that it should have been dealt with, even going back 30 some odd years ago, whenever Bush Sr. tried to convince society that Saddam Hussein had bombs of mass destruction, even though a prior president, Ford, denied that privilege and said that what that our government had been involved in was wrong. So let's watch, not so much anymore of him, but let's go directly to what I want to go to, pertaining to the United Nations.
Tonight, a dramatic legal move that could effectively shut down the New York real estate empire that bears the former president's name.
See what I'm saying? Just a constant badgering and a constant dragging out old skeletons that eventually is bound to have some sort of a negative effect up into Donald J. Trump's empire. Sometimes honesty, according to the Bible, all the time, honesty is the best policy. And I know that don't sound trivial when it comes to a politician, but you know, I guarantee you, Bill Clinton, his hand was forced, just like Watergate and just like Nixon and other corrupt politicians that we've had, that, you know, once your hand has been discovered and shown, you need to you need to do something different, because your hole that you dug for yourself is now getting deeper and deeper.
IRS, who may and are likely to initiate their own investigations and possibly criminal charges.
All right, Danny Savell, it's good to have you here. Thank you. At the United Nations, President Biden...
In other words, I hate to see the country torn apart. And I really feel like that even Al Gore could see that in the dispute over the hanging chads with young Bush. And because of his love and his elegancy for the country, and probably discussed it with several of his candidates or several of the people that he was working with, it was more of an elegant thing to walk out of the arena with a bit of pride than it was to walk out of the arena, obviously, the way that Donald J. Trump is going to walk out of the arena, because there's no way that he is going to be able to win in regards to this. I mean, he may deceive a few more people, or he may keep his space a little bit, pretending to those that was arrogant enough to fall for his unappropriateness that he created, and using the Jerry Springer tactics in wanting to rev up the people. He may gain a few more people from this group or that group. That's gullible people to begin with, but by and large, the wind that was in his sail is basically almost completely knocked out. And I kind of feel the same way about the individual that's in behind the commentator to his left, which would be to our right, pertaining to poisonous Putin, that he has basically stonewalled his own self to the degree of all this madness, that now, no matter what he does other than retracting and basically surrendering or telling the world that he made a mistake, and that now he's going to be held accountable for the war crimes that he's committed upon to the Ukrainians, that he's either going to have to do that towards maintaining any type of positive image to the world, or he's going to have to dig his hole a little bit deeper. And I'm just afraid the hole that this man's thinking about digging is going to be a hole that's not only going to be for himself, but it's going to be a hole for a great deal of people that could in fact include America in that same hole. And if it's not a direct hole pertaining to a direct hit of a nuclear missile, it would still be a direct hit politically, economically. I could go on and on and on of the ways that it could affect us over here in America, and I think people are beginning to wisen up to this.
Biden delivered a condemnation of Russia's President Vladimir Putin and the war in Ukraine, hours after Putin hinted he might use nuclear weapons. Kristen Welker reports on the escalating tension.
President of the United States. Tonight, President Biden on the world stage at the United Nations, delivering a stinging rebuke of Russian President Putin and his war on Ukraine.
Russia has shamelessly violated the core tenets of the United Nations Charter. We will stand in solidarity with Ukraine.
The president slamming Russia's attacks on schools, hospitals, and train stations, and alleged war crimes.
Whoever you are, wherever you live, whatever you believe, that should make your blood run cold.
And responding to Putin, who just hours earlier appeared to threaten the West with a nuclear strike. Saying in a rare televised address, those who are trying to blackmail us with nuclear weapons should know Russia has lots of weapons of its own, adding, quote, "This is not a bluff."
They're making irresponsible nuclear threats to use nuclear weapons.
And just days ago, President Biden was asked what would be the consequences for a nuclear attack.
It'll be consequential. they'll become more of a pariah in the world than they ever have been.
Now, a new escalation from Russia. Putin announcing a partial draft. The defense minister saying 300,000 reservists with military experience will be sent to Ukraine. Putin calling it necessary because the West crossed all lines by giving Ukraine military aid. Though tonight, that move sparking protests across his nation, including Moscow. Putin raising the stakes further, backing referendums this week in 4 regions currently held by Russia, which would ask Russia to officially take over those areas of Ukraine. President Biden...
Now you see why that it was critical to get the nuclear agencies in there on that factory towards shutting down that one factory that had 5 reactors in it, that they have finally, I think, shut down. But then there's another nuclear plant a few hundred miles away from that one that, the way I understand it, some of the Russian military has already struck some bombs within 600 to 1,000 feet of that particular nuclear facility. So it's very obvious that the world needs to look at this guy in the sense towards him basically being a loose cannon, number one. Number two, I'm sure that his military base, that's basically all of the police force in and around that city where people are protesting right now. I'm sure that they're powerful enough that they can probably knock so many heads around and put so many people in jail and give them big long sentences, or possibly go to killing his own people, to the degree that he can literally start a civil war in his own country. And to be quite honest with you, that's really the way that this situation needs to be handled. If this Putin character ain't willing to do the right thing, similar towards like Trump is not willing to do the right thing, it's going to take an aggressive force of some sort, either by his own people or by others, in taking this guy out. Because just like Biden said, if he was to strike the Western world here in America, if he thinks that the things has been cut off from him now is bad, and the starvation and problems that his people have been setting back and experiencing for the past 6 months, if he thinks that that is bad, he ain't seen bad. This whole thing could fester into another world war, just like what occurred with Adolf Hitler. And I pray to God that it doesn't, but it actually could. It has the potential of escalating into something that I don't even think most American people can even begin to fathom, in the consequences and the repercussions that is going to be laid out for not just the Western world to have to suffer, but basically the whole world to suffer through. And we're already seeing the beginning phases of that towards all these major gas rising, petroleum prices going up. We're already seeing it in the price of fertilizer, and the price of grain, the price of natural gas. We're already seeing it now with the price of food pertaining to other countries that is basically just imploding. That some of the people have actually had to resort to cannibalism. I mean, the Zulus have come back out, the headhunters in Africa, because not only is their environment gone belly up pertaining to cattle and livestock can't live over there, but they themselves can't live over there. They're perishing. And the only way to live is basically to live off of one another. And whenever a society goes in that direction, that is not a good direction for a society to go in. And Putin needs to figure that out, because the rest of the world has nuclear bombs too. He thinks that just because he's got nuclear bombs, that people are supposed to bow down to him, or that he's going to hold the world hostage because he's got nukes. Well, guess what? Everybody else does too. And if they all point the nukes in the same direction towards the Kremlin, what do you think's going to happen to Russia and the Russia's people? That's the reason why it is imperative right now that his people stir up enough problems over there that he either resigns or surrenders, or the worst case scenario would be if they basically took him out and had him assassinated. He has stirred up that kind of trouble, almost like Donald Trump stirring up the trouble that he stirred up over here. There has to come a time whenever logic has to have more of a principle to it than your self-appointed needs. There has to be. And if it's not, then you're basically just a vicious mad dog, the same way as it would be if there was a bear running around in a neighborhood and people needed to take him out. Or a vicious wild dog that kept biting people and giving people rabies that needed to be taken down. Needed to be taken down. We wouldn't put up with that type of behavior over here with some wild animal going on a rampage and killing all of us. That's not our way of life. We're not going to surrender to evil. It's the purpose of evil surrendering to good. Because even Jesus said, rejoice not because the spirits are subject unto you, but rejoice because your names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And to be quite honest with you, for a great deal of us, if they was to go ahead and take us out, they would actually be doing us a pleasure, because then we would be absent from the body, we would be present with the Lord, and we wouldn't have to go through any more anguish, pain, and agony and distress that a great deal of us right now have been forced upon to having to go through because of our age, because of our circumstances, because of various things that's happening in our lives. There's so many people right now that would be literally in the stage towards being better off removed from this planet than it would be to stay in this planet. But we know that that's not even the right proper way, especially whenever it comes to self-inducing that particular event, because everything is in God's hands, and if God meant for us to go through what we're going through, then whatever that we're strong enough to go through will make us stronger towards not having to go through it again, or being able to face off on what we may end up having to face off on. It's in the hands of the Lord.
I'm calling those
In a big perspective, but in another perspective, it's in the hands of individuals like Putin.
a sham. It all comes as Russia is in retreat after Ukraine's counteroffensive, giving up some of the territory it occupies. Tonight, Ukraine's President Zelensky unleashing his own stern warning.
We cannot agree to a delayed war because it will be even hotter than the war now. For us, this is a war for life.
And Kristen, President Biden is facing other challenges, including keeping the allies together on all this.
That's absolutely right, Lester. The president is aiming to keep allies unified around sanctions against Russia, as well as support for Ukraine, particularly Europe, which relies on Russian oil and gas and is bracing for the possibility of a recession, Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker tonight. Thank you. After blasting, and tonight, 2 captured Americans among those freed by Russian-backed forces in Ukraine, part of a prisoner exchange between Russia and Ukraine. Richard Engel is in Ukraine tonight. And Richard, some very good news for those Americans and their families tonight.
Lester, sometimes we get word of deals like this, but this one was kept completely in secret. It was negotiated by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and he managed to secure the release of 10 foreign nationals, including these 2 Americans, Alex Drueke and Andy Wen. They're both from Alabama. Drueke served in the U.S. Army, also served in Iraq, Wen a former Marine. They were captured not very far from here. I'm in Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine several months ago, and now they have traveled to Saudi Arabia on their way home. And this is also very good news for the Saudi Crown Prince. Some good press for him, as he is generally considered a global pariah. Lester?
All right, Richard, thank you. After blasting across the Caribbean, Hurricane Fiona...
Well, you know, whenever things get desperate, people has desperate means, and maybe those people over there are trying to clean their slate and trying to look a little differently in the eyes of the world, and maybe this is one of the ways towards trying to butter up the world in covering up just exactly who they really are. We've had so many problems with so many countries. I mean, Iran, I mean, there's a big standoff right now pertaining to their people standing up against that regime. I personally believe that the American government should stand with the people and trying to topple that regime. There's an uprising happening right now over in Russia. I just pray to God that that regime will end. That government that Putin has put together towards these old vindictive inaccurate feelings that he's got about how that their people got the short end of the deal, and that he thought that he was just going to be able to run over a bunch of people that was standing up for their rights and standing up for democracy the same way as we stood up for our democracy. I mean, nobody is going to sit back and just let basically Goliath consume David. Because if you look at the size of the Ukrainians versus the size of Russia, there is no comparison. There is absolutely no comparison, and it would be speaking volumes about us or other countries that wasn't willing to support the Ukrainians in these matters. So, Putin's kind of like Trump. The cards are stacked against you, buddy. You're either going to go a little deeper in your hole, your own hole that you've dug for yourself and dug for your people, or you're going to reevaluate the situation in a logical form and either give up your post, surrender, or take a chance on somebody assassinating you over in your own country. Because eventually, whenever the harshness gets that far out of hand of a regime change pertaining to a uprising, usually there's a lot of death and despair that goes on in an event like that, and it's really, really heartbreaking. It really is. We're going to end right here pertaining to this storm that has recently piled drive various islands.
Fiona is sweeping north tonight and could inflict a devastating blow to Canada's Atlantic coast, as much of Puerto Rico still tries to recover tonight. Gabe Gutierrez is there for us.
Its trail of destruction spread across the Caribbean. This woman describes the moment her roof ripped off her home. It destroyed everything, she says. While in Puerto Rico, they're using PVC pipes to collect fresh water from mountainsides, scenes reminiscent of Hurricane Maria's aftermath 5 years ago. This time, Fiona dumped more than 30 inches of rain in some places.
To give you a sense of the power of all that water, it came crashing down the side of this mountain and washed out that road. From our drone, you can see the perilous drop to the river below. Authorities had to rescue several people from the top of that mountain, and locals tell us a few are still up there.
Today, FEMA's administrator, along with Puerto Rico's governor, toured hard-hit areas. We wanted to know why, according to experts who testified before Congress last week, only 19% of relief money allocated to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria had been spent.
Has Puerto Rico effectively used the relief money it was allocated following Maria?
We are working very closely with our counterparts here in Puerto Rico to make sure that we are addressing the issues and making sure that we are designing these projects to be more resilient for the future.
The National Guard is now rushing supplies to communities that are cut off, like this one. They're standing on the other side of a bridge that had been rebuilt after Hurricane Maria, only to wash away again.
You don't have water, no tienen agua.
We could barely hear her say no, but her face spoke loudly. Tonight, she and so many other Puerto Ricans hope someone is listening.
At least 8 deaths in Puerto Rico are suspected of being tied to the storm. Across the island, more than 70% of customers are still without power, and the heat index today topped 100 degrees. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you. Fiona's destruction may not be over, and there is another storm we need to pay attention to. Al Roker is tracking it all for us tonight. Al?
Lester, we are watching the Atlantic really start to heat up. We've got several disturbances we're watching. We'll zero in right now on Fiona, but we're watching this one down by the Leeward Islands. We've got a Category 4 storm still. 130 mile per hour winds. It's 615 miles southwest of Bermuda. It will cross to the west of Bermuda sometime early Friday morning with 130 mile per hour winds, but it's going to not get the heavy winds there. They're going to see maybe 2 to 4 inches of rain. But Canada, this may be the strongest storm ever, hurricane ever, to hit Canada with 85 mile per hour winds, a Category 3 storm. Then that other storm we talked about, this Invest 98L, the development zone in the Caribbean south of Puerto Rico. But as we put the ensemble models of the Euro and the US up, you can see from Cuba to the Yucatan, Lester, we're going to have to watch this right on into Tuesday.
All right, Al, thanks very much. In 60 seconds, the latest big interest rate hike by the Fed, what it means for you, and warnings about even more painful days ahead in the battle to bring inflation under control.
As someone living with type 2 diabetes.
So they're raising interest rates again. That way people go from one payment
And the Fed's fight to bring down inflation, Chairman Jerome
jacked up to another, and I don't see how that's going to help the economy. It may help the inflation, but I don't see how it's going to help the economy. Because anytime you got more people that's going to have to declare bankruptcy because they can't make no longer that at one time $800 a month payment that's now $1,300 or $1,400 payment on the same home, or people that's their rent has went up in cost. I just don't see how that's going to help people's lives independently. Because if anything, it's going to add more insult to misery. I don't get it. I really don't. I wish somebody could sit down and explain to me how raising the interest rate is going to control inflation. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe looking at the big picture overall, it may have some sort of influence on it. But whenever you're constantly dragging people's lives down and dragging families' lives down, and people are steadily going in the hole and having to lose the things that they have been trying to obtain for the past 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 years, I just don't see how that doing this is an asset versus a hindrance. I may be wrong. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure out their theory.
acknowledged there will be pain.
Higher interest rates, slower growth, and a softening labor market are all painful for the public that we serve.
Small business owner and...
So I guess in other words, they're kind of caught up in between the lesser of the two evils, damned if you do and damned if you don't, and they're choosing to do this to kind of put the brakes on everything of being the lesser of the two evils. That's what I'm thinking that he just got through saying. I don't know.
Owner Anika Hobbs is already feeling it.
Where will you have to make cutbacks? Yeah, I mean, some of the cutbacks that I've been thinking about is staff hours. Payroll is always one of those things that you can manage, but then that also is a huge pinch on me.
With the central bank today raising interest rates for the 5th time in a row.
When you ring these in and you type in that final...
The owner of boutique Nubian Human has to press pause on her expansion plans.
Because we're paying more into debt rather than being able to take that money and put it into hiring more people or expanding into a new store.
The Fed's move today is an effort to curb consumer demand and in turn cool inflation, with prices 8.3% higher in August than they were a year ago. But Pounce's challenge is the balancing act of bringing prices down without triggering a recession. The Fed today anticipating that unemployment will rise from current levels of 3.7% to 4.4% at the end of next year.
We have to get supply and demand back into alignment, and the way we do that is by slowing the economy.
They're already talking about retail, Walmart and Target and all these other big retail stores, that their sales has dropped tremendously just within the past 3 to 4 months. And of course, if things stay high like they are in putting people out and raising up their car payments and raising up their previous rent and raising up their mortgages, it's only going to add misery into that many more people's lives. So how can this actually be a stimulus to our inflation or the economy by what they're doing? I don't.
Something that will be felt by everyone. When the Fed raises interest rates, borrowing money becomes more expensive, impacting car payments, business loans, credit card debt, and mortgage rates, which have now reached their highest level since 2008.
And this likely isn't the end. Chairman Powell today signaled the Fed is likely to keep raising rates. Its next meeting in November, a decision due just 6 days before the midterm elections. Lester.
Okay, Emily, thank you. Up next, it's a key governor's race. We speak.
Sounds to me like that they're on their way towards outpricing themselves, because whenever the consumer products completely stop to the point that nobody is buying no more houses, whenever almost nobody is getting involved in renting any or leasing out any businesses or opening up any more businesses or buying cars, sounds to me like that you basically are shooting yourself in the foot. I'm not a mathematician. For some reason, I just do not get how that this is going to correct the problem that has been generated, that we've all felt now just within the past 6 months, especially since COVID has basically been toned down a little bit. I just don't see where what they're doing is helping more than it's hurting. And if I'm wrong about that, then I'll apologize. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But obviously there must be other people that feel the same way that I do, just like the woman that they just got through interviewing, towards her basically
Abrams
feeling the same way pertaining to her business, of how that she was going to have to backtrack and not produce in putting in areas where originally
expanding into a new store
where that she was going to expand into. If she's feeling this crunch, if she's talking about this and feeling this, don't you think that thousands, if not millions of others are feeling the same thing? Sure they are. Absolutely. Just like I got word yesterday that Wells Fargo, one of the biggest financial institutions in America, was fixing to foreclose on 30,000 units in Florida alone. And that's just one bank. So where are we heading with all this? I'll let you do your own thinking pertaining to what's going on here. Because the Federal Reserves may be a day late and a dollar short. In other words, they should have jumped on this whenever it first started escalating if they was going to have any true bearing on using this. I'm going to use the terminology towards reverse psychology. If they was going to use this particular psychology strategy, they probably should have done it within the first 30 days or 90 days whenever they first seen this thing roaring up the way that it was, whenever gasoline kept going from $3.20 to $3.60 to $3.80 to $4.10 to $4.50 to $5 to $5.50, and of course diesel still ain't come down. That's another area that OPEC is controlling, pertaining to the devil and the devil's people. That's basically holding the world hostage, pertaining to the petroleum products. In addition to how the devil's people have deceived people and misguided them and misled them into where we are right now as far as the economy and as far as the environment and as far as 9/11. The devil is trying to cover up its tracks. The devil is trying to put on a new face or a new image, but I got news for the devil. He's already done been had too, just like Donald J. Trump or Putin. These people have been had, and now the determining factor in what they do is going to be based upon how they really feel about others, regardless whether it be Donald Trump, regardless whether it be poisonous Putin, or regardless whether it be King Abdul or King whoever it is over there in power now, the princess, the prince, the evil demonic people that masterminded 9/11. It's spiraling, and it's spiraling in the wrong direction. It's not spiraling in a good direction. It's spiraling in a bad direction, and that's the reason why I say I just don't get it. It may be some sort of reverse psychology strategy, and it may have worked if they'd have done it quick enough on the front end, but as far as what I'm seeing now, all they're doing is adding insult to misery pertaining to the Federal Reserves. All it's going to do is let the rich get richer and the poor and the working class suffer that much more. And as the poor and the working class suffers, and they have to illegitimately give up that in which what they have struggled to keep, then all of a sudden here comes the powerful, here comes the elite coming in behind them, and boy, they take advantage of that situation towards buying houses and cars and etc. on pennies on a dollar. That way they can make some more money. That way the 1%ers can stay in control of the 99%ers. That's what I'm seeing. Now, if I'm wrong, I'll apologize to the people. But that's exactly what I'm seeing. And this game that the petroleum products has been a part of has done this now for about 5 or 6 different times. In my first event, from watching it firsthand, whenever I first started driving, was right after the major lie that the oil industry put out that there was a major gas shortage in the early 70s. And of course I didn't start driving until about 77 or 78. I think I was 15 and a half whenever I had to get a driver's permit. And by that time it done already settled down a little bit. But until that time, you know what it done to the farming industry over here in America? It broke them. You know who come out on top? The ones that the bankers and the ones that the powerful wanted them to come out on top. And that's whenever we started seeing mama papa businesses around here farming anything from 60 to 260 acres, which was at one time considered a big crop, to now You got farmers that farm anywhere from 2,500 to possibly 5,000 acres per farmer. You done away with the small man. You done away with the little guy. He couldn't afford to hang on. So how many times are they going to play this game? Regardless whether it be a construction outfit, regardless whether it be businesses and retail, regardless whether it be gas stations, regardless whether it be farms. How many times are we going to watch them play this same song and dance, and the American people sit back and allow it to happen and aren't willing to do nothing about it? I realize that my voice is just one voice. But you know what? I'm using my voice, and I'm getting my message out there. And it may be raising a lot of eyebrows. I may be making more enemies than I'm making friends. But that still does not prevent from me speaking truth to power. And whenever it gets to the point that we can no longer speak truth to power because we're afraid, like they are over there in Russia right now, of either going to jail or being killed, then the page is turned to the point that it becomes a major, major bloody road ahead, in which I've done already, foreseeing. God had done already showed me in 2005 that a bloody road ahead was coming. I just didn't realize the extent of that in which what God had showed me about a bloody road ahead, just like all these environmental changes, these radical weather changes from extremely, extremely wet to extremely, extremely dry to extremely, extremely hot, just like us breaking records today here in Northwest Tennessee of getting around 101 degrees, and that's the real temperature. That ain't how it feels. I mean, if you put the humidity and everything else in there, you're probably looking at around 105, 106, 107 degrees, depending upon how high the humidity was today. What's your point? My point is that we are changing, and we are changing for the worse, not for the better. We're changing for the worst, either politically, economically, financially, environmentally. We're going backwards. We're going backwards. Instead of us going towards peace and utopia and prosperity, we're going backwards. And we have been going backwards ever since the political affairs decided that they was going to do what they done, ending of the Reagan era, towards turning left instead of turning right. We have been going backwards ever since then. It's only exacerbated itself or accelerated itself since COVID has hit, and now it's sure enough spiraling down, and there's no way that anybody can deny that we are spiraling down in the bad, wrong direction. To me, it's kind of like a mountain climber that's trying to climb up a mountain, and every time him or her grabs a hold of a root or grabs a hold of a rock, and they think that they got a good sound barrier towards being able to pull their body weight up, then all of a sudden they start sliding. They go up about a half a foot, but they slide down 3. Well, they try it again. They go up a half a foot and they slide down 3. They go up a foot and they slide down 10. If you continue to do that again and again and again, eventually you will hit the bottom. Instead of you going to the top of the mountain, you will eventually hit the bottom of the mountain. And once we get to the bottom, what is it going to look like? What are we going to be facing off on pertaining to a madman and somebody stirring up problems over here in America? Between that, all the weather events, all the high prices, now you got the Federal Reserve that's adding that much more problems to the problems. I mean, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? I'm going to tell you when it's going to end. Whenever God gets enough of it and he does just exactly what he says that he will do in the first part of Revelations, long about the first 3 or 4 chapters, that he will throw us off into great tribulation. And that great tribulation, my friends, can come in probably 1,000 different ways. From diseases to war to pestilences to famines to fires to floods to tornadoes to hurricanes. I could go on and on and on 1,000 times how that we can be thrown off into tribulation. I just pray to God that whenever God returns back towards gathering up the bride for the Lord Jesus Christ, that the meek will have reached its peak to the point of the meek inheriting the earth, the way that the Bible has selected and predicted for it to occur before the end of time, or before the time whenever God himself will cast us off into great tribulation. And I realize all these events, just like what happened in what you just got through witnessing, just like the Ukrainians, they feel like that they have been thrown off into tribulation. And why would they not? Sure you would. If somebody was bombarding your community and your country, and now you're having to do without, and the things that you was used to, now you're having to get used to harsh means, why would you not feel like that you was off in great tribulation? You would. You would. Just like the people over in Puerto Rico right now that's going to have to go through what they're going through.
Paul's challenge is the balancing act.
It's going to feel like tribulation. And you know, whenever all that post-traumatic stress disorder comes flashing back with all them people that's already went through what they went through, they may not be able to handle it this time. I pray to God that they don't end up taking their own lives or taking it out on one another, but it's a strong possibility that that's what would and could occur. It's really sad. The world right now is in a sad state of affairs. And what we don't need is a maniac threatening to start throwing nukes and basically destroying not just human life, but all life. That's basically what we're looking at right now, towards somebody holding the world hostage over nukes that's threatening not just to end a portion of life, but is threatening to end all life. Because in each bomb that goes off, it takes about 100 years before the radiation gets so low that you can go back and start tilling the ground and working and doing what needs to be done in that area. Thanks again, and good luck to all of us as we end the program by saying God bless America, God bless America's troops, God bless America's endeavors, and may heaven help us all. Shalom.